Good morning, and thank you for tuning in to the Andrew Tate Show, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. We've got a great show for you guys today. We're going to be covering the NCAA head warns of student athletes extinction, expanded NCAA tournament, the Big 12 and ACC coaches not keen on the idea of the CFP buys for SSE in the Big 10, and make sure you stick around for later in the show when we'll be diving into the oddities of the day. Before we start, I'd like to ask that you like and follow the show. Also, we get a number of questions from viewers that come in during the show, so to ensure that your question gets read on the air, I ask that you use the tips and donation link with your question. The tips and donation link is GSMCPodcast.net. This puts your question at the top of the list so that I can see it, and it also just really helps the show. Tate is already starting off the morning by trying to distract me while I'm doing the intro.
Well, Faith, she got her hair and nails done, so her hair looks all nice and
Yeah.
bouncy and cool. She's looking good. She's
Got a
bringing her
haircut
A game.
yesterday.
She's bringing her A game on a Wednesday. So, as she was going, I just said, nice hair, which kind of threw her off.
See the little comment in the Zoom. Well, how are you,
How,
Tate?
I was sharing earlier that it's already been a long day. I've been at the office. I get to the office at like 4. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been here for 8 hours already. So
Yeah.
it's been an extra long day. And I still have what, another 8 to 9 hours still to go.
It's just a
So
typical work day for Tate,
it
honestly,
is
though.
called a long, long day. So all right. So what do we have going on, Miss Faith? Other than the fact that the hair is on point.
Thank you. I also got a new cup, too, adding to
Boo.
the collection. Yeah.
I only support that McDonald's cup of yours. That's it.
This one's my cup, though. I bought this one yesterday. I think it's cute. It has a little straw and everything. But anyway, so basically the theme of today's show is the drama of what I call the reality TV show of college athletics.
It is because it just never stops.
Yeah.
It just doesn't stop at
Stuff
all.
keeps going down. So,
Doesn't it feel like football doesn't start until the games are over? Like once the football games are over, that's when all hell breaks loose, and that's when the reality television program
yeah.
kicks in.
Yeah.
Last year it was the Pac-12. This
Mm-hmm.
year, everything's going
Yeah.
on.
Complicated stuff. So,
Yes.
the NCAA head warns that 95% of student athletes face extinction if colleges actually have to pay them as employees. The NCAA president Charlie Baker said Friday that actions by Congress was needed to protect what he described as the 95% of athletes whose ability to play college sports would be endangered by a court ruling or regulation decisions declaring them as employees of their school. Speaking to a small group of reporters near the NCAA's Washington office, Baker was realistic but still hopeful about the prospect of Congress doing what it didn't do despite persistent requests from his predecessor, Mark Emmert, granting the NCAA a limited antitrust exemption that would allow it to make rules safeguarding college sports without the constant threat of litigation. His comments took on more urgency when a Tennessee judge ruled Friday that the NCAA could not block schools from using name, image, and likeness money to recruit athletes. Baker was informed of the ruling during his meeting with reporters and declined to comment. The NCAA said later in a statement that the ruling will aggravate an already chaotic collegiate environment. Whew.
So beforehand, you said you had some of this was kind of confusing. So is this
Yes.
the one that was kind of confusing to you?
Yeah, a little bit. So if you could possibly break down some of this, because, I might not be the only one that seems like this
Oh
is a little
no, no,
confusing.
no,
So,
no. You're definitely not the only one on this one. Okay. So what they're saying is this, or what he's saying is this. in the world of college athletics, first off, you have Title IX, which means,
Mm-hmm.
that women's sports, actually, you have to, whatever you do for men's sports, you got to do for women's sports.
Right.
And, and then there's all those Olympic sports. There's a lot of sports at universities that go on, but there's only one. Maybe if you're a lucky, very small group that are lucky to have two sports that actually turn a profit, most mostly it's college football that turns a profit, and
Mm-hmm.
the rest of them cost money. For some people, basketball, the North Carolinas, the Dukes, the Kansas, schools like that, basketball makes money. That's where it ends. That's where the line ends. So when you think about all the other sports out there, they only cost universities money. Most universities are in the red. If you when you take out college college football, pretty much every university in the country sports program loses money. It just gets subsidized by the college football world.
Mm-hmm.
So what he is saying is this: if the courts do not step in, there's going to be a lot of universities that have to make some very tough decisions. Hey, we want to keep pace with the Alabamas and the Georgias and the Ohio States and the Michigans and the Oregons and the Penn States of the world, because they're going to be paying players, the Texases of the world, USC's, they're going to be paying players. So schools like Mississippi or Auburn, which is some of the bigger names, but the Vanderbilts of the world, the Oregon states, the Washington states, the Florida A&M, those schools, they if they have to start paying players, there's no money for the
Mm-hmm.
lacrosse team.
Mm-hmm.
There's no money for the soccer team. There's no money for the cheerleaders any longer. All that money goes away because most of these schools are barely hanging on and are barely making money. So when you look around and you take that money that they were making from football and now they got to pay players, that puts that whole program. The one thing that some of these athletics are looking forward to is football season, so they can get some of that television money and some of the football game money, so they can offset some of the other programs. Now they have to pay players. The football program's losing money. The students, are you going to raise the cost of tuition for the students so that they can keep these programs, or are they going to start cutting these programs? You know, Now, there's no longer lacrosse. There's no longer women's basketball. There's no longer this sport or that sport because, and what pretty much what he's getting at is he could actually, and this is just, speculation, but he's looking at a world where it's like, hey, we got to play players. We have to get rid of 95% of all the student athletes on campus because anyone that's not making money is sinking the university at that point. There are some universities, football makes so much money that it pays for some of the programs that students go to. Now, some of that money is going to have to go to, hey, we got to pay these guys. And so what he's saying is that unless the federal government steps in and give antitrust exemption, then meaning that, okay, you know how like the ruling that came in and they said, you can't punish universities for name, image, and likeness, and
Mm-hmm.
they're opening it all up. Well, they're hoping that the government will step in and give them the ability so that they don't have to worry about being sued and things, so that they're not finding themselves in court losing battle after battle after battle, which that's what they're doing right now. And so if they gave them antitrust exemption, then they can put a stop to, hey, we don't have to pay these players, or we don't have to make them employees. That's what he's talking about. There is a slippery slope here that could destroy college sports. As everyone tries to keep up with the Jones, you have to make that decision. Do you want to keep, let's say, the University of Georgia from, you want to keep them to keeping up with the Alabamas and the Ole Misses of the world, the Michigans and Ohio States of the world, or, and that may cost Georgia getting rid of women's volleyball, women's cross country, lacrosse, and everything else, but keeping the football program viable. That's what he's talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it
Because
does.
these universities are losing massive amounts of money. Their athletic departments are.
Hmm.
I have, let me see if I have this here. When you look at some of these universities, and they have very, very lean, uh, yeah, I do have it here. Like the highest grossing universities that are turning a profit. It's not a short list, but when you think about the hundreds of universities out there, Ohio State is one, Texas is two, Alabama's three, Michigan's four, Georgia's five, LSU's six, Texas A&M is seven, Florida is eight, Penn State is nine, Oklahoma is 10, Auburn 11, Michigan State, Indiana, Virginia, Florida State. Gets that long until you get to Florida State, who is an ACC team. That's the first ACC team that actually hits there. Virginia and Florida State finally gets there. There are no Big 12 teams. There's no, all these other universities. When you look at that list and you're looking at the top teams, they're all SEC, Big 10, SEC, Big 10. And
Hmm.
if they're not SEC or Big 10, they're about to become SEC and Big 10. Like on this list, Texas and Oklahoma, they're about to become
Hmm.
SEC. You understand where I'm coming from?
Hmm.
These universities these universities are struggling. And if it came down to, hey, we have to pay players and we have to get rid of programs, there's going to be a lot of athletes that are playing non-traditional sports, or what they call Olympic sports, that are not going to be around. And think about this. You live in the state of Georgia. You go to
Hmm.
Georgia University. If someone said, "Hey, Alabama's about to win the national championship again, we got to start paying players, but we're going to have to get rid of women's cross country and lacrosse."
Hmm.
And I don't know why I keep picking on those two. Most people are going to be like, get rid of those. But it's a travesty to get rid of those. Those
Yeah.
programs do a lot for the university. They put their heart and soul into
Hmm.
their sport. And imagine your sport going away just because we have to keep pace in football.
Yeah.
That's hard. That's
Hmm.
what he's talking about. Does that make sense? Did I
Yes.
explain that, or am
Yeah.
I
Yo.
even more confusing? Now you're like, what? Just cancel the show today.
No, it makes a little more sense now. It's just, ooh, complex. All of this is just so
Ooh,
complicated.
it is. It is. And it really does come down to, if the government steps in and, like he says, gives the university antitrust exemption so that they don't have to pay players.
Hmm.
But I like this whole name, image, and likeness. I do think that players should get paid. And here's the reason why. Universities make millions of dollars. When you look around, and let's use these Big Ten and ACC schools or SEC schools, and you start looking around, and Ohio State's going to make $100 million just off their television contract. We're not talking about ticket sales or jersey sales or anything else. $100 million this year, right around $100 million, just off the football team. And before name, image, and likeness, you couldn't even buy a football player a hamburger without getting in trouble. Now they're making millions, and college football is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and these kids were not even allowed to get, a hot dog after the game. If a booster came over and said, "Hey kid, you had a good game," you're like, "Man, I'm really hungry. Hey, here's a hot dog." That's an NCAA violation.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it came from. Something has to be done, because I don't want to see college football destroy college athletics. But it is headed that way, because with this name, image, and likeness, with the fact that the universities and the colleges, and Congress hasn't stepped in, there needs to be like a commissioner or someone that can kind of step in and balance this out. Because if you keep it the wild, wild west, that dollar figure that these kids are going to get, hey, if you're an all-star quarterback, I'm going to Georgia. Well, next year, hey, I know you're getting $1 million. Why don't you get $2 million? You come to Alabama. Forget the $2 million. Here's $5 million to go to Ohio State. Eventually, it's going to destroy college athletics, and maybe some universities.
Yeah. Didn't you say earlier though that you thought it would be a good idea for the university to pay them as employees?
Yes, I do think it is. But it needs some guidance. If you came in, that's the reason why I think if college football broke away from the NCAA, or the NCAA worked on something where it's more of the NFL model, you put a commissioner that is in charge of college football. You set a program up where each school has a salary cap. This is how much a college football player gets paid. Okay, everyone gets a uniform price, salary across the board that's reasonable, where these universities aren't getting crippled, but these kids are getting some money. Right now, it's the Wild West, so it's just unregulated. Hey, we want a championship. So Texas A&M goes out there and they say, we're going to buy every player that we can. The heck with the future. And they raise the price. And then Georgia's like, oh no, we got to keep pace. So we got to raise the price, and we got to keep on. And you keep on doing this, it eventually cripples the entire thing falls. But if you can have a situation where a collectively bargained agreement, where it's like, okay, this is how much money college football brings in. This is the most amount of money you can pay for kids. The university gets this much, half goes to the kids. The university would always have their portion. The kids would always have their portion. And that's how it can be a balanced situation. Where right now, where there's no salary cap, no regulations, all you can have a chancellor or a school president or a coach just say, you know what? The hell with the future of Georgia. I want to win right now. I'm going to burn it down because I want to win now. And we'll figure out what happens in 2035 later on down the road. But I'm worried about this year, right now, and just really put a university in massive debt that they can't recover from. That's why. So I know I'm talking on both sides, because yes, I think the players deserve to be paid, but there needs to be some regulation so there's a balance.
I gotcha.
So, all right. I was just impressed that I actually just had this on my phone. Wasn't even planning on pulling this up. But I just so happened to have like the whole list of the highest grossing schools and how much money they make, and the schools that lose the most money. And it's a rough place there.
Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious. It's like I'm watching a telenovela with all of this happening.
It is because it is cutthroat. It is
Hmm.
absolutely cutthroat. And everyone is like, hey, we need more players because we need more money from the television contracts.
Hmm.
Schools are like, get me the heck out of this university. We're only getting 30
Yeah.
something $1 million.
Hmm.
We want more than that. We want 5 times that or whatever it is. And it's just turning, greed is destroying college athletics.
Yep. Yep. All about money. All right. Well, guys, with that, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to be discussing the CBB insiders preparing for expanded NCAA tournament, which is likely 72 or 76 teams. But stay tuned and we'll be right back.